Alright guys, you may have already seen it from the in-game announcement. There will be a new story and also a new gacha tomorrow, which is going to be Incomplete Domain Megumi Fushiguro. Now, some people will be surprised by this because we were all expecting Yuta to be out next, judging by, kind of the way things were in JP. We had the whole movie collaboration first before having Megumi, Incomplete Domain Megumi. Um, I don't know. I'm not that surprised by them because I kind of were expecting the movie collaboration to happen during Christmas and New Year period for some reason. I think it's just the fact that because it has 3 parts, it just seems like such a big event, and we are so close to Christmas. I was actually kind of already guessing they will happen over Christmas, but that was purely my speculation. I don't actually know how it's gonna be. Maybe they are actually gonna delay this to half anniversary or maybe even longer. Who knows, right? We'll just wait and see. But is this a good thing or bad thing? Personally, I don't mind having a bit extra time to save for Utah because I mean, obviously, I do not have enough. Like, no one have enough for pity right now, so I certainly don't mind extra time for Utah, especially if they're actually going to give us, some extra cubes as a part of this event. Then I don't mind. You can have another 2 or 3 events and just give out those cubes. So I don't mind from that perspective. But what I am slightly worried is the fact that they're actually releasing this incomplete domain Megumi very fast while there's still banners going on. On JP, for example, whenever I played, I think there was only a maximum 2 gacha at the same time, or like 2 events at the same time. However, if you count, take a look at global. I mean, outside of those 3, which is kind of like launch events, so I can kind of park those away. But so even then, you still have this Junpei banner and also the Homesick Horizon banner for Yuji. And there's already 2 events going on right now, and you're adding a third one. It just feels a bit overwhelming. And it feels like they're rushing things a bit, maybe to catch up to JP. So let's see how it actually goes. If they're actually catching up to JP, then hopefully, well, I don't know whether they'll do this, but what I wish they could do is that they will give us some cubes to also compensate for the fact that on JP people had longer between banners to actually summon on things. And also the other thing I kind of want them to do is add in some of the quality of life updates that they already have on JP, because you can't just rush through the banners but not rush through the quality of life stuff either. For example, I know on JP this was only a feature that added recently, but gacha points can actually be carried over at a rate of 2 to 1. So for example, right now there's 10 gacha point. I can actually carry that over and become 5 gacha point. So basically to be used in the next banner. And it kind of just makes your pity slightly easier. Actually, you need to summon 20 times. The ratio is 20 to 10. So you can't actually do anything with 10. But assuming you have 20 gacha point, you can convert that to like 10 universal gacha point to be used in a future banner. So that's kind of why if you are going to rush through banners, I'm kind of hoping they will be rushing through those quality of life updates as well. But let's wait and see how it will actually be. Now, in terms of the main topic for today's video, obviously I want to do a bit of review on Megumi. Now, I understand not everyone will be wanting to summon on him, purely because people are still saving up for Yuta and see how this game pans out, etc. And I do agree that is the best strategy you can probably go, especially for free-to-players. Definitely skip Megumi. He is gonna be in the general pool. Now, once again, on JP side, he's only added to the general pool like 8 months after his release. But if they're rushing things, there's always a chance maybe they will be adding Megumi to the general pool, maybe slightly earlier than how they did on JP. We don't know. But for any no matter what, Megumi is a general pool, so you are not missing out by not summoning on him now. However, Yuta is actually a limited character who never ever came back at the rerun on JP, so you should definitely still prioritize Yuta over Megumi. But for those people who still want to understand exactly what they're missing out on and how good is Megumi, etc., that's basically what my video is going to be about today. I'll be going through all of his skills and giving you guys a bit of a review on whether he's going to be any good, how do you actually want to play him, what are the main strategies, what kind of teams you want to play him in, etc. And also I'll cover the recollection that we'll be having in the same gacha as well. So once again, you guys kind of know whether this is worth summoning for or what you are missing out by not summoning on it. Okay, so first thing, Megumi, he is a mixed character. So basically, he has a skill 1, skill 2, which does melee attack. His skill 3 does a combination of melee and curse technique attack, and his skill 4 is purely curse technique attack, and he also has a domain expansion, which is kind of his main unique selling point, right? His domain expansion is very, very strong. Really cool animation as well. Basically, what it does is it adds lots of debuff. You basically let all of your enemy have a debuff, so they take more damage and also they do less damage. At the same time, you have an attack immunity on yourself and also decrease the amount of curse energy you'll be using up on your other skills. It will also change the effect on all of your skills, which I will go through in a bit. And also, you won't be able to fill up your own ultimate gauge at the same time. That's just to prevent you from doing back-to-back domain expansion. So nothing really to worry about there. Okay, so in terms of his other skills, you have his skill 1, which at base level, at base level and also basic effect is 120% scaling on a melee attack. That scaling is actually pretty decent. A lot of normal attacks is only 100% scaling, so this 120 is actually pretty nice. Now, on top of that, when there's actually domain, he's gonna have almost double the amount of damage, but also have a ridiculously high amount of debuff, which is 75%. So that's kind of why he's normally more sort of as a support or a debuff unit rather than damage dealer. Even though his ultimate does do a lot of damage, by the way. His ultimate does do like 1,000% scaling at level 1 and like 1,600 at level 10. So that's very good damage, but normally people will be using him more for like a support role because of all the debuff, etc. Now, his skill 2 is probably my favorite skill out of all of them, mainly because it's an AoE. I just really like AoE attacks. Now, when it's on the domain, it'll be even stronger, but normally what I tend to do is actually use his skill 2 a lot to charge up his ultimate. And then once you actually have domain, then I'll be end up using skill 1. Now, what makes his skill 2 really nice is not just the fact it's AoE, but also it only costs 15 curse energy. And that basically means you can actually use this twice in a row without and from turn 1 without needing to charge up or anything like that. Basically, if you have seen any of my videos on domain investigation, for example, where AoE really shine and I use Mekamoru for that, Mekamoru in comparison needs 30 curse energy in order to use his AoE, and basically that means there's no way you can use it back to back. Whereas for Megumi, what you can do is you can literally go into domain investigation, just buff up your whole team, do this back to back twice, you wipe out everyone, go into the next stage, do this again, back and back twice, and you're done. And it basically makes domain investigation ridiculously easy because you can actually use this twice in a row. So that's kind of why I really, really like this skill. Skill 3, I'm not a great fan of it. Yes, you are doing a bit more damage, etc. However, the debuff you're applying is only for melee attacks, and right now the strongest DPS are still Nobara and Gojo, and both of them are more curse technique attack. So that's kind of why, whilst I understand why this maybe sounds appealing with the debuff, etc., especially because when you have actually be in the domain, the debuff gets even stronger as well. But because it's only melee, that's kind of why I don't actually tend to use this as much. The other additional ability is that you're also able to stun someone when you're using it in domain. But once again, I feel like that's not the most useful thing, because if domain is there, enemy will already be doing 35% less damage. So even if you have to tank a hit from the enemies doing domain, it's not going to be that much damage anyway. So that's kind of why I just feel like it's an okay-ish skill, but nothing special. Normally, what I would personally recommend is that you will be doing your skill 2 most of the time to build up your energy and also wiping out the mobs, etc. Especially, for example, when there are multiple waves, you will be using your AoE in wave 1 and wave 2 to wipe away all of those mobs in the enemy waves. And then in wave 3, your ultimate should have been charged up. You then do your domain expansion, do massive amount of damage, debuff the boss, etc. And then keep on using your skill 1 to get even higher debuff on your enemy, while your another DPS, for example Gojo, will be wiping them out. So that's basically personally the way I will be playing Megumi. Now, something else which is also worth mentioning is that he also have this characteristic, which is basically at the start of each turn, when his curse energy is less than 15, basically you're going to fill up your ultimate gauge. And what this makes it really nice is that he is actually okay in auto, because normally one thing you may found already in auto mode is that some characters, they tend to just use the attack with which costs the highest ultimate gauge, which costs the highest curse curse energy, and that basically sometimes can mess up your attacking order when you're actually altering. And basically with this, even if they kind of messed up your attacking order because they're using skill 3 and then therefore not leaving you enough curse technique or curse energy to use a different attack next turn and force you to use a normal attack, that's not so bad when you're actually recovering your ultimate skill gauge in result. And also because when the ultimate skill gauge is actually charged up, the AI will be focusing on using the domain expansion first ahead of any of the other skill attack. So actually, even though AI normally plays stupidly for incomplete domain Megumi, yes, AI will still be playing some skills pretty stupidly, but at least you are getting something out of it as a result as well. So I think like incomplete domain Megumi is not a bad character if you just kind of want to auto off your battles either. Now, in terms of where do you want to play Megumi and kind of what is he most suited for, he is a yellow debuffer or attacker, so he kind of have a similar role-ish to Nobara. Nobara obviously will be a lot more damage focused, whereas Megumi will be adding in a bit of those debuff on top of the fact that he can also do decent damage himself. So depending on whether you already have Nobara, or whether you actually want someone else in this kind of yellow attacker role outside of Nobara, that may already play a decision in terms of whether you actually want to summon on him or not. Now, in terms of where you actually want to play him, outside of just color advantage, etc., I kind of already mentioned he is kind of more for boss battles, especially when you are facing any boss battle when there are like multiple waves of enemy before the boss as well. The reason why he's really suited for boss battle is because unlike buffers who kind of buff up your own character, so even if the enemy get killed off and new enemies appear, the buffs are always there. For debuffers tend to always do better against bosses, so that any debuff you apply on them, they will always be there because you won't be killing off the boss so easily. So that's kind of why you're not wasting your debuff on, let's say, the weaker enemies beforehand, and that's kind of why Megumi is normally really good for those type of stages when, for example, there's a boss at the very end. The other content Megumi is really good for is actually this one, which is in the game right now, but it's not unlocked here. This map battle. So basically, you can see tomorrow we'll be unlocking the last part of this map event, and basically there will be a new boss at the end of this event which kind of asks you to do as much damage as possible to them, and based on how much damage you have done, you will then get rewarded accordingly. And once again, for those type of events, it's basically just a race to see how much damage you can deal out within 3 turns. Basically, there's like a 3 turn in the middle, which is basically testing how much damage you can do. And within those 3 turns, Megumi is one of the best characters because of how much debuff he can add. If you just take a look at this, from just domain expansion, the enemy will be taking an extra 45%. On top of that, you can also use his skill 1, which is another 75%. And because it can last for 3 turns, you can actually stack this up for at least 3 times during those 3 turns where I say, we're testing how much damage you can do. And then immediately the enemy is already under like, a 250% damage reduction. And that's kind of what makes it so crazy when you're actually using him for those type of events to see how much damage you can actually dish out to a single boss. So those are kind of the main areas where you really want to play Incomplete Domain Megumi. And because of this event, is always going to appear every single month. This kind of makes the value of incomplete domain Megumi quite high because you will be actually be required, well, not required, but he will be coming in very handy for you every single month when that event appears. So that's why he is actually rated very highly as a unit. Now, in terms of the recollection, that is also in the same gacha alongside with him. Basically, I don't think it's that good. Basically, it's able to do something on it. So basically, let's just separate out the base effect and the dupe one effect. If we just take a look at the base effect, it's able to do 2 things. It's able to fill your ultimate skill gauge, and it's also able to recover your own HP. Now, that sounds really good on paper. However, if you just compare one of them by itself, you then feel you would then realize there are other recollection which are able to do it better. So for example, this one which fills up your ultimate skill gauge by 250. If you actually beat formidable foes and collect this recollection, what you would realize is that this one can recover 360. So a lot higher than the Recollection that's about to be released, and this can be used with a 4-turn cooldown, whereas this one has a 5-turn cooldown. So immediately this one's outclassed by an SSR, which you can get in game for free by beating Formidable Force. Now you can argue that one doesn't recover your HP, whereas this one does two things at once. However, you have to bear in mind, normally you want to increase your ultimate skill gauge at the start of battle. Normally you only want to recover your HP after you have been hit. So even though this thing, yes, in theory can do two things, how often do you actually need to do both things at the same time? It will actually then turns out actually, if I actually want to make the most out of increasing my skill gauge, I should be using it on turn 1, and therefore I can get this cooldown activated as soon as possible. However, if I actually want to use to recover my HP, I would actually have to wait and hold on to it, and in that case, it actually then affects when I can then increase my ultimate skill gauge. So that's kind of why, even though it has both effects, it kind of then becomes a jack of all trade and master of none, because it's just going to be really awkward on when you would actually be wanting to activate it. And that's kind of why I don't actually feel like its base effect is that good. Now, in terms of the dupe 1 effect, this one is actually decent because it will increase all damage for your allies by 25%, and that's going to be for 3 turns, which is actually really, really strong. The only thing is, this is activated on the 4th turn from the start of the battle, so you may have to play around with it in terms of the type of enemies you are facing, because let's say if you're actually facing an enemy with 3 waves and there are already, let's say, 4 enemies in wave 1, then you may not necessarily be able to get to the last wave, the wave with the boss, by your 4th turn. So that's kind of why I feel like this Recollection with this dupe 1 ability of this Recollection can be very useful in certain scenarios, but it's very much dependent on the enemy layout and whether you can actually get to the actual boss that you want to fight by turn 4. So that's kind of why I feel like overall this Recollection is just like above average, but nothing crazy that you really have to pull for.